Well, folks, since Kamala Harris's election loss to President Trump in the 2024 presidential election, she has been toying with the idea of getting back into politics and how she is going to do that. There's multiple different paths for Harris to get back into politics, including a 2028 presidential bid in the Democrat primary, potentially a 2026 gubernatorial bid for the governor of California. So there's a lot going on with Kamala Harris. We are going to break all of that down for you today. But first, you have to start with the complete shock and disappointment following the 2024 election. We know Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election to President Donald Trump by 312 electoral votes to 226 electoral votes. She lost the popular vote by about 1.5 percentage points, earning roughly about 75 million votes. And Democrats, even Kamala and Tim Walz, were absolutely stunned by this defeat, expecting it to be a much closer race. We saw Donald Trump sweep all 7 swing states, all 7, after Kamala Harris's 107-day campaign after President Biden withdrew in July 2024 after the really horrible debate performance against President Donald Trump in June of 2024. And you look, what did the media do? The media did everything they could to keep this campaign together. We saw large pundits in the mainstream media saying that Harris ran a, quote, flawless campaign on Election Day 2024. But the narrative has shifted heavily post-2024 election. The Democrats lost the presidency. They lost the Senate. They lost the House of Representatives, leaving them without a clear leader. And a recent CNN poll and an NBC poll show that most Americans hold unfavorable views of the party. Anywhere from 21 to 29% of Americans have a positive view of the Democrat Party. And there are some smart Democrats out there who are calling for the party to be rebranded, citing there's unclear messaging. They don't have a message. They don't have a messenger. They just don't. But then there aren't a lot of Democrats like that. Most of them are saying that, they did everything flawlessly in 24. That they're just going to double down on exactly what they've done for the last 12 years, and they're going to be just fine. And you know what? As a conservative, someone who leans to the right, I would love to see that. Please double down on your horrible policies. Please. I would love for you to double down on your absolute horse SHIT policies. And since her loss, Kamala Harris has really been silent. She was at an award ceremony. She's done a couple small things, but ultimately has really been out of public eye for the last about 6 months from now. And Kamala Harris reportedly is considering weighing a run for the governor's office in 2026. Now we know incumbent Governor Gavin Newsom is term limited in 26 and has his eyes set on the 2028 presidential election. Now, he cannot run again, and he will run for president. We know that for a fact. Gavin Newsom is desperate to be president in 2028. And from a political report here, it shows that Harris is also considering a third presidential bid. A third presidential bid in 2028. But a gubernatorial run could really complicate those national ambitions because it's been made pretty clear to most people that this is a binary decision. You can see right. It's a binary choice. She has told people she can either run for governor or president, but not both, which makes sense. It really does. She would have to start running for governor soon. She would run a campaign and then immediately have to turn around and run in 2028. She would not be able to govern the state very well. She wouldn't govern it very well, period. But it would be even worse. There would be more neglect on the table. The state would be neglected even further than it currently is. We saw recently that the state of California is having to borrow $6 billion to fund their Medicare program that allows illegal immigrants to be on Medicare. They're taking loans out as a state when they have one of the highest deficit of a state in our country, and yet they're taking out loans to pay for medical insurance for illegal immigrants who should not be in this country to begin with. Okay. It's like if that's what you guys are all about. But ultimately, we know that if she were to run in 2026 or 28, it's going to be a struggle. And I think as of right now, it would be safe to say 26 would be safer than 28. Because I think there's a lot of donors and supporters who see that as a much stronger path than a presidential run in 2028. And even one donor who didn't want to reveal his name said that in March of 2025 that a 2028 presidential run would be very bad and embarrassing for Kamala Harris, saying that there's a lot of donor fatigue in the struggles post 2024 campaign, make it hard for any of these big donors to throw more money at Kamala Harris. But then there are others who say that she would absolutely clear a field in the gubernatorial race in California, which would be huge. So maybe that's the smarter political move for her to make right now. Now, running for governor in 2026 would require a campaign started very, very soon, leaving, like we said, no time really to pivot for 28. She would immediately have to turn around and pivot for 28 if she were to run for the presidency. Which, if she ran for governor, she could delay the presidential run until 32, but that's a pretty long wait in politics. That's 7 years away. That's a pretty long ways away, and a lot can change over the next 7 years. But she has to make a decision because ultimately there are other big Democrats like Katie Porter who are jumping in this race. Like Xavier, I don't know how to say his last name, but the former Secretary of Health and Human Services under Biden. He was the former Attorney General of California. A lot of big names jumping in this race here. Rick Caruso. That's at least on the Democrat side. So the field is getting pretty packed as of right now. But she may still have the opportunity to clear the field if she jumps in. Because and now looking at the 2028 Democratic presidential primary, it is shaping up to be a pretty crowded. It's weird. They don't have a deep bench, but it's going to be pretty crowded. Some potential candidates include Pete Buttigieg, who's the former Secretary of Transportation, who ran a pretty strong, relatively speaking, campaign in 2020 and then dropped out and endorsed Biden. You have Gavin Newsom, who's the current governor of California, who, like we've said, built a huge national profile on being a part of the resistance to Donald Trump in his first administration. You see AOC, who currently just raised $10 million. $10 million she raised in the first quarter of 2025. A congresswoman from a district that voted for her by what? Let's see. She's right around here. They voted for her by 40 points. And she's raising that. She only raised $15 million in her 2024 re-election campaign. In the 5 months preceding that, she's raised over $10 million. Over $10 million you're looking at here. You're not doing that unless you have some ambitions outside of New York's 14th congressional district. Let's not lie to ourselves. She's going around the country with Bernie Sanders on her Fighting the Oligarchy tour. Obviously, garnering a lot of national attention, which she may be able to win a primary. But I do not see AOC winning a general election. Good luck. Good luck explaining to the oil workers in Pennsylvania why we can't frack anymore. Good luck explaining to the Michigan workers and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin workers why we need to continue shipping more of their jobs overseas. Good luck explaining that to them. Then you have people like Cory Booker, who, is the epitome of the Democrat Party right now, who literally stood up for 25 hours, gave a speech, basically just complaining about Donald Trump for 25 hours. But ultimately, that's what a lot of Democrats are looking for. They're looking for someone who's going to fight like that. And you know what? That's what he did. Even though it's pathetic, and he wasn't filibustering anything, and it was one of the most pathetic things we've ever seen. The Democrats are going to give him credit for it. But then you have other governors like Whitmer and Pritzker and Josh Shapiro who could possibly be candidates in the 2028 Democrat primary. And ultimately, we know the campaign for 2028 began before the 24 election even occurred. This began probably a couple years ago when they were trying to consider who would replace Biden in 24. But then, of course, we know Biden went through, decided he was going to run, then withdrew, and really just put the Democrats in a really, really bad situation. But here's the reality of a 2028 run for Kamala Harris. When you're looking at the polling here, you can see she clearly has an edge. Her universal name recognition gives her a pretty big edge. But she's a two-time loser. And ultimately, most voters know who she is. I don't think all voters know who Pete Buttigieg or Booker or Newsom or Whitmer or Shapiro or, I shouldn't say Walz, but I don't think they know who they are. And maybe Tim Walz at the top of a ticket is a different person. So ultimately, she is at the highest name recognition she probably ever will be. Most people have a decision on her, and yet she's only pulling a fourth of the Democrat primary vote. That's pretty low. That's pretty weak. And a recent poll came out with Buttigieg up 4 points on her in a crowded field. And there's a lot of advisors who are saying that Harris will deal with a tough primary from people like Newsom and Buttigieg, who are already building the groundwork and the donor networks in the national profile to run in 2028. You saw Buttigieg not going to run for the Senate or governor's race in Michigan. Gavin Newsom obviously is term limited. You're seeing Kamala Harris obviously could run in 26. We don't know yet. But then you look at Tim Walz. He's kind of toying with running for governor again for a third term in Minnesota, but maybe he won't, and he's going to hold out for a run in 2028. But at the end of the day, they are building out the donor networks. They are laying the groundwork for a run in 2028 to build that national profile. And a gubernatorial run for Harris will limit her campaign nationally, because she will be a governor then. There's a reason that Whitmer isn't running for the Senate. There's a reason Buttigieg isn't running for the Senate or the governorship. There's a reason all these people are not running for elections. Simply because they know it will take up too much of their time. They need to focus on their national campaign, their national profile. And the only way that Kamala Harris is going to get the nomination in 28 if she runs is if she somehow can position herself as the leader of the resistance to Donald Trump, which I think disappearing, and she's really disappeared for the last 6 months. Disappearing like that is not showing that you're the leader of the resistance. A leader gets out and leads. A leader doesn't go away to their house and disappears. A leader stays out in front of the public eye and keeps moving forward. But she really has yet to do so. And like we said, she does lead a lot of these Democrat primary polling, which shows that she has name recognition. But ultimately, I feel like there's going to be a lot of hesitancy from donors to throw more money behind her. You know, like we said here, she is only running 10 points ahead of Pete Buttigieg. Only 10 points. That's not good for someone who was the vice president of the United States and was the nominee in 24. You should be seeing her plus 50 percentage points for 50% of people wanting her again. Now, ultimately, 62% of Democrats in most of these polls, or I should say Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents, want Harris to play a major role in the future, but ultimately, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to be the president. That could mean the governor of the largest economy, the largest state in our nation. But I think there's a lot of people, Democrats and donors alike, are divided. You know, should they just not kill her off, but just kind of not allow her to run again? Basically, they're going to say, look, you're not going to have the support. The party's not going to support you. The party is going to put their support behind someone who can win. That's the reality. Because Democrats rarely renominate candidates who lose presidential elections. Like, when was the last time? The last time a Democrat lost and then won again was 1892 with Grover Cleveland. You can't, like, that was the last time. That was what, 130 years ago? And now, although Harris will remain a top contender for the 2028 nomination, leading with early polls right now because of strong name recognition, her 2024 loss in the party's soul searching is going to create a lot of challenges, along with the challenges of a 2026 gubernatorial run, which could delay a presidential run or just derail completely her presidential ambitions for 28. And with a crowded primary in 28 and rising stars like Pete Buttigieg, AOC, or Gavin Newsom within the party, I have a hard time seeing how Democrats are going to look back to Harris and say, yep, we want you again. But let me know, what do you think about Kamala Harris's path to 28? Do you think she should run in 26 for the governor's race? Do you think she should run in 28? Let me know your thoughts down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future, and we will catch you next time.